WCIA 3 High School Coaches Roundtable discussion. We are fortunate enough to have 6 area coaches here with us tonight that we will be guiding the conversation with in the next 30 to 45 minutes. As the calendar year turns to 2021, a lot of people have questions about what this future year holds with high school sports. And there are way more questions than answers. I know a lot of these coaches, a lot of other area coaches, a lot of area parents, and most importantly, the players want to get back on the field or court as soon as possible. That's what we're going to discuss tonight as we get set here to just navigate this uncertain time in 2021. We were all hoping as the calendar turns towards 2021, it would have been filled with butterflies and rainbows. That isn't the case yet. And so we're still in COVID mitigations phase 3 through the state, which is essentially putting all high school sports on hold right now. Let's go ahead and introduce our panel here. Dan Sheehan, the Monticello Athletic Director, joining us tonight. Nic DiFilippo, the Mahomet-Seymour boys baseball coach. Brett Hefner, the Effingham football coach. Andy Romine, the football coach at Tuscola. Durrell Robinson, the boys basketball coach at Danville. And Larry Sparks, the softball coach at St. Joe. My hope in this is that we can have a positive conversation about moving forward at both the challenges, the realities of where we're at right now as a state and trying to play high school sports. And my goal was to get a lot of perspectives from different coaches, whether that's a large school boys basketball program or basketball program in general. That's what Durrell's going to provide for us tonight. We've got spring sports, we've got football, and that takes a lot of priority. And then I wanted the athletic director perspective as well from Dan Sheehan. So, Dan, I'll start with you because I think you provide maybe the most overhead in of all of this and out of all of us in this conversation. How have you navigated the last 8-9 months, and how are you navigating the future here through 2021?
It's been with a lot of communication with our coaches, our students, letting them know the information that we have. We've tried to stress to our student athletes to not stress it, and they can only control what they control. Let the administration, let our coaches try to navigate the way for them. But I've relied heavily on area athletic directors. We've built some relationships between St. Joseph, Unity, Mount Zion, Mahomet. We've come together to see what's working for them and what we can do, and if they found a way to do something. But bouncing a lot of ideas off of each other. But most importantly, we're looking for any and every opportunity for kids. That's our number one goal, is to get them opportunities and get them back competing and representing Monticello High School.
And how tough is that, Dan, to keep the kids positive and just the unknowns? Because everyone's coming to you for answers as the athletic director, and there's times, I'm sure even today, you don't have answers for them about what is happening or what is next.
It's been a lot of up and downs. I remember back September, October, when we had the contact days, was probably when we were at an all-time high. Our student athletes got to compete, got to practice, got to do drills. And the biggest thing that we were hearing was that don't take away something that we did well. And, from area schools and even here at Monticello, we collected data. And things went well. I had a meeting with Craig Anderson trying to get the IDPH to collect data from our contact days. Because I was trying to look at an area to use evidence-based to throw this back at IDPH and our governor to say, look, at our schools had 187 contact days, per school, and how many positive cases. But, so that happened. And then, basketball, the biggest struggle was with basketball. We were doing things, we were practicing. And then right before it got ready to start, they made basketball a high-risk sport. We were able to do it all fall, getting ready for the first day. And they told us that it was a high risk, and now we can't even practice. So that was challenging. But Coach Roy and Coach Barry have done a nice job communicating with our kids, just trying to check in with them on a daily basis. But you're right, we don't have answers for them, and that's the one thing that, from the IHSA's perspective, is give us answers. It's now January 2021. There's supposed to be 5 weeks left in basketball, and decisions need to be made.
And I want to start with basketball because you mentioned, Dan, there. I want to bring in Durrell here to talk just from a basketball perspective, because this is first and foremost right now when we look at the calendar year and the time is ticking. And in my eyes, we're running out of time. We're going to get to a point here where there is no more time to play any sports. What are you telling your kids right now, and how are you navigating this, knowing that you're supposed to be in the thick of, basketball?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for allowing me to be on here. With basketball, like I said, it's been very tough, especially at Danville High School. You know, basketball is very strong. It's been powerful here for years. Even to the fact of the IHSA moving it back to Champaign this year, which brought back a lot of memories for myself. I got a chance to play at the Assembly Hall as a sophomore. So we were thinking about possibly bringing that pride back. But like the whole time, it's just been like he said, we need direction, you know, and we trust everybody who's in position where they're supposed to be at. But if we have a plan, that would help a lot. You know, it could help a lot if we just had a plan and being able to shoot for it, even if it's just down the line. Give us something to work for, so all of us, because everybody's a lot different. Different towns, different, different protocols, different types of enrollments in schools. So if we all had plans and guidelines, we can fight. You know, we can start putting ourselves in situations where we can make these safe for these kids. A lot of kids need need the sports and activities to kind of occupy themselves. With us here, it's just all I've been able to do. Like I said, we've even had like Zoom parent meetings when we find out something. Our athletic director, Mark Basie's, does an incredible job. And what I do with my kids usually, I got them on group text. I'll send out text messages here and there, you know, really about mental health, you know, things of that nature. Like a lot of these kids, there's a lot of strong-minded kids. Like I try to encourage them, let them know how strong they are being able to deal with stuff like this. And then I also send them some Zoom workouts I get a hold of. I got some friends like Jordan Brand. So I give them Zoom workouts that they can go ahead and work out on their own, and just try to keep them positive and like we let them know too, like whenever we find something new, we'll let them. But right now, we really don't have the answers. You know, nobody really has the answers, and we usually are the ones that answer. So we just trying to keep motivated and just trying to stay positive as we can.
Yeah, and I think it's funny you say that, and it's not funny, but like everyone expects you to have the answers. You're the coach. You're the AD.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be the leader, and yet you're sitting here with your arms out going, I don't know what
Right.
we're doing.
Yeah.
And are you in school yet, Durrell? Like, are you guys back
No,
to
we're
in-person learning?
everything we've been doing has been remote. Now that's another question. There's a possibility we may go to blended learning next week. Still not sure on that, but I really believe that balance goes hand in hand, like with sports. You know, if we're able to do sports, you know, or remote learning, I think one way or another we got to balance that one way or another. You know, because if we go back blended learning and one kid tests positive, it could kind of like kill our chances, you know, as far as like doing the sport. You know, so
Yeah.
it goes neck and neck with things. So right now we've been doing remote learning. The remote learning has came, and it's something new. Like I said, at the end of the day, it's a pandemic. It's called a pandemic for a reason. The remote learning has gotten better as time is going on. Even us as teachers have adjusted with ways of learning, you know, because kids are in different situations at home, and there's different situations for each kid. You may have a kid that needs to babysit their younger brother during the day. You know, there's different scenarios and situations where we're trying to just learn and grow together.
Yeah, and I want to come back to you, Durrell, in just a few minutes here. I know we had Tevin Smith, who committed last Friday. Yeah. He's not even playing right now. There's more topics in this, but I want to real quick just ask around the room here, who is on like in learning, who is remote here? If you can just kind of like go down the list here, Nick. We'll start with you. Is Mahomet in school right now?
We're actually going for full time, 4 days a week with everybody starting tomorrow morning. So it'll be our first time of attempting to do that. We've been hybrid up until actually tomorrow. So we've still got about 30% of our students who are going to be remote, I think. And but we'll find out what it's like with everybody in person.
Yeah.
I think come 9:30 tomorrow morning.
Okay, so that's progress in that sense. Andy, where is Tuscola at right now?
Yeah, Brett, we've been in person since day one. We do offer a remote option, but I will tell you, there's not a huge percentage of our kids who have chosen that. It is an option as required by the state board, and we do have some kids who have chosen to do it. What we've found is, when given the opportunity, more and more kids are coming back all the time. We've had a number of kids just here in this week that were remote for the entire first semester that are coming back. But I've got the majority of my kids have been to school every day of the year, not just on our football team, but in our classroom as well.
Okay. All right. Dan, where are you guys at right now?
Since the first day of school, we've been in. We're here 5 days a week from 8 to 1 o'clock, and similar to Tuscola, we offered students an opportunity to do remote learning as well. And things have gone well here. We've had a hiccup here or there, but overall our students are handling it well. Our community's adjusting to the rules, and we got about 100 kids at the high school level in remote. I think it picked up more at the holidays once we found out that basketball wasn't starting and sports weren't happening. But those kids get the option to come back for the second semester, which will start January 19th.
Okay. Larry, where's St. Joe at right now?
St. Joe's, they're in school learning right now. They're split into two groups every other day. One group's in there. They go 3 days 1 week, 2 days the next.
Okay. And what about you, Brett? What about down in Effingham? How are the Hearts handling it right now?
We're doing well. The most of the kids are in person, and we modified the day and haven't had a whole lot of issues.
Okay. And I guess that's maybe the bigger question, and you guys can weigh in on this. If you're not in school learning, I find it hard to believe that this state is going to allow kids to compete in sports. Is that a question? Is that a fair assessment? Like, how do you guys view that as we move along here? Not all at once. Whoever wants to jump in.
I'll start here and just say we struggled with this at Tuscola a little bit in terms of our decision. What do we do if they say, going back to the beginning of the school year, a month in, they're gonna allow sports? What are we gonna do with our kids that are remote? If you're saying I'm going remote because of the pandemic, and you're worried about the pandemic, and you can't be at school during the school day, can you really justify coming back to practice for 2 hours a day if the pandemic's really the reason you're missing? So that was something that we were back and forth on, I know, and our administration talked a lot about with us coaches. But we've had schools in our league, Brett, that haven't been in school. They weren't in school until October at all. They were remote every day. And so while we're sitting here and I'm going to Indiana and watching high school football games in the third round of the playoffs, 10 minutes from our border, the question I had was, yeah, but we've also got kids in schools in our league that aren't even going to school at all. So how do you justify that also? And so obviously school's got to come first, in our opinion.
Yeah. Who else wants to jump in on that topic here as we get another 30 seconds minute here on this?
I'd agree. I think we have to get all the students statewide. I mean, there's a lot of schools up north of I-80 that aren't in school. A lot of the suburban ones. Chicago's just trying to get back in, but 50% of their teachers, I think I read today, didn't even show up the first day. So it's a challenge, but I do agree that we've got to find a way to get students in school to prove that we can keep it safe.
Yeah. And I think that makes sense, right? I mean, not trying to say one way or the other, but like it should be about the kids and being in school. And if the kids aren't in school, then how are we going about and promoting kids to be in an extracurricular activity and certainly a contact sport? Okay, I know football holds a lot of weight here, and we're going to get to football and hear from our football coaches. But as we move along here, I know Nick is going to argue, hey, we already had a season canceled. I know Larry's going to say, I already lost my potential state run, with Bailey Dowling and one of the best players to ever go in this area. So for you guys in the spring, I mean, I don't know if you're fighting against each other, but like, how do you weigh here moving forward? Okay, well, if we do have to pick, and if we get to a point that the calendar's not going to allow us to pick, and we can only play 1 or 2 seasons, Nick, I know you're fighting to play baseball because you didn't play last year.
Bert, we've talked about it before. It is difficult. And I mean, keep in mind, I want everybody to get an opportunity. There's no question. Part of me, though, is really hurting for, I think of my seniors who didn't get a junior season or could possibly not get a senior season too, which is frustrating. And obviously I think the baseball and softball coaches and track are really fighting to make sure we get some type of season this year because of how devastating it was. I saw, how hard it was for my seniors last year to not get a season, and obviously the juniors the same way. So obviously I think all of our spring sports coaches are advocating. If we could get something, we've got to be able to get that, and no attack on football by any means, but it would be nice if we could attempt to get something for all the spring sports that lost everything last last spring. And keep in mind, I want to see football go and basketball find a way to play also. So that's important for our mind. We've always said in our district, and I know a lot of you guys are the same way, we want our kids to play all the sports. So I want to see my baseball guys succeed on the football field. It makes them better athletes. It makes them better baseball guys. So it is pretty difficult. There's no question. But then deep down, it's like, I've already lost one season. I don't want to lose two. So that's probably what I got. Coach, what about you?
Larry, what do you think about not losing a second season and trying to keep your athletes motivated when they're probably looking at it and saying, well, we already lost one, or are we going to lose another? Are we even going to play?
Well, I'd have to echo Nick, right off the bat. It was really bad to lose that season last year. I felt bad for all the seniors across the board, whether it be baseball, softball, or track. I'm a football, basketball guy too, and I don't want to see any of them lose anything, but I really don't want my kids to lose a second season. I think we proved that at least with the outdoor sports, the middle school teams were able to make a go of it. We got the protocols in place to check the athletes, the coaches, and whatnot. If there's a problem, they go home. But we were able to make it through, and I don't think anybody thought we would make it through that middle school season without some kind of shutdown, and it never happened. We made it to the last day. So,
yeah, and I'd be curious of your opinion here, Larry and Nick. Larry, I'll start with you. Did you feel like they should have switched baseball and softball to the fall? It's largely a non-contact sport. Do you feel like it could have been safely done in the fall, and maybe we're not even having this conversation?
Do I think it could be done? I think it could have been done. I don't know if that was the right thing to do at the time. Hindsight's 2020, and maybe looking back, maybe we could have. I don't know. We watch sports on TV. We watch our kids playing out of state every weekend, and it's happening everywhere with little to no, problems. I just think that it just needs to be looked at a little tougher from those making the choices.
What about you, Nick?
You think about it, hindsight's easy, right? Like, we should have played. There was no problems. I think Coach is right. Like, there were so many what ifs that were out there. Like, are we even going to make it through? And, is the middle school going to be able to play? And they were, right? And I don't think we had a single incident with our middle school kids in any of the sports, cross country, softball, baseball. They were all able to play, no problems, which was great. And I think the IHSA, and I don't want to speak for them, but it's like, well, if we get started and then they lose out and we get an uptick of positivity, then we have to cancel this season. Now they've lost two quick ones when their season should have been, in the spring. And is the vaccine coming? And hopefully, so it is pretty difficult to look at it and to know exactly what the thing is, the best thing to do. I think the hope is, obviously with the vaccine coming in, we are going outside, and I think Coach spoke to the protocols they put in place. I think we know it works if we can at least use those things outside so we can continue to keep moving forward.
How late would you be willing to go, Nick, for your baseball season before you were like, this isn't even worth it, or it's not going to work? I mean, could you start in June?
I think for me, as long as we're done before, was it August 12th when football season starts, in fall of 2021 would be okay. Obviously, we got to give the kids a little bit of a downtime and some transitional time. But I would be okay starting in June. I don't want to speak for everybody, but we'd love to get the opportunity to get back on the field with our kids. It's better to start in June, in my opinion, and to lose another season, that's for sure.
Larry, how do you feel about telling kids, especially in baseball and softball where summer ball is so big, if you've got a kid that wants to go play somewhere else, I mean, what do you tell them if they can go out of state and play 60 games this year?
I mean, that's what we're all up against right now across the board. We're fortunate that our athletes are able to go and do that right now. I would like to think at the end of the day they would want to choose to play for the school, but that no state championship thing looming over our head right now makes it a really tough decision for them. If they got to pick or choose, do they go play these big tournaments where they're going to maybe get some exposure? It's kind of an individual thing per kid, not really a uniform thing. But I'm like Nick. I would really rather play late and get it in than not play at all.
Yeah, and I think that's the consensus for most people is like, look, if we could see the future and know that we could start in June, yeah, I think we'd all sign up for that, but we just don't know. It's still the unknowns. Let's circle back to basketball here, and I don't want to exclude Nick and Larry from the rest of our conversation because they're a big part of what's going to start here and where we might go here. But Durrell, like you're not even in school. Do you feel like you could safely play basketball if you got back in school? And what's the latest you would be willing to go here before, you're like, hey, look, this isn't going to work out. You need a couple of weeks for practice, right? I mean, you guys been doing Zoom workouts that you've been sending them or whatnot. But, like, what's your timeline here as we move forward here? We're, already 5 days into January. It's going to be the middle of January before we know it.
First of all, it's safety first. And this pandemic is really based on responsibility. So, like, if somebody is exposed to something, got to be responsible, and handle it, then we move on with it. I think we're more than capable of being able to do it. And I think, honestly, I think it would be a good thing. Somebody had presented this a while back, Michael O'Brien, who writes for Chicago Sun-Times, had said something to the nature of playing basketball like March, like starting in March maybe, and then like alternating with AAU teams. So like like with the school for March, AAU team for April, back to your school team in May, and then June. I'm like, it makes all the sense in the world, and it sounds easy, but I don't know if they're willing to do it. And at the end of the day, because the kids want to play, coaches want to coach. That's on both sides of it. As long as you have relationships with those AAU, with the travel ball coach, whatever, it can work out just fine. I really believe so.
Yeah, and that's got to be tough. I did a couple stories this year. We went even into Indiana during football season. I mean, you're right there on the border. Kids in, I'm sure, Indiana that are playing. Like, how do you dissect that, mentally knowing that you just cross a state line? There's literally nothing different other than.
And like I said, and I wouldn't, like I said, kids gonna want to play. Kids want to play. So there's some kids who fly over there playing tournaments and things. They got leagues and stuff over there in that nature. So you can't get mad of a kid who wants to play a sport that you love. You're trying to teach them to love anyway. So whatever they can do to better themselves, as long as they're safe and healthy, all right with it. So just try to keep them positive and motivated and just do whatever we can the best we can.
Yeah. Dan, how do you kind of navigate this here as the head of your school and athletics, trying to say, hey, look, we're going to move forward here maybe when you can't even practice? And then the other thing that came out in December that was interesting to me is that there's going to be contact days for all the other sports but basketball when we get back out of these phase 3 mitigations. So then what does that mean for basketball? Obviously they want the season to start, but is that going to happen?
That's going to be another challenge. I think the one thing that we do know is based on the mitigations and the way that he set up the sports is we will play baseball and softball. There's no doubt in my mind that baseball and softball will be played. It's just going to be a matter of when. Right now we're scheduled to start April 19th. Because we proved in the fall we can play it. It's a low-risk sport. We can play with low-risk sports. But we just got to get out of mitigation 3. The question is going to be is when. How long do we keep pushing basketball and football back? And that's going to be the question. Because if we start running out of time, the question is does baseball and spring sports go back to the original date? But in regard to the contact days, I think the contact days are great. It's an opportunity for kids and coaches to get together. But the problem is with football and basketball being high-risk sport, their contact days are limited. All they can do is shoot. 7-on-7 could occur, so it's more playing the game and following the rules. But I'm all for the contact days if it's an opportunity to get kids. But the problem is we need basketball to move back to a medium risk sport to allow us to do things. I just think we're running out of time, and it's a long shot to get these high risk sports to low risk so they can play games.
What's the latest in your eyes as the athletic director where you say we could postpone this basketball season before it just doesn't make any sense anymore?
The last discussion that I heard was there's a possibility, a last-ditch effort to do a 5-week winter sports season, a 5-week spring sports season, which would be football, boys soccer, volleyball, and then a 7-week summer season. Talking to the football advisory committee, they said that 4 games would be their absolute lowest that they would be willing to do it for. And, talked to Coach Welter today, and, he was always around 5. But like he said, if I can get 4 games with my kids, that'd be 4 games I didn't have. Basketball in a 5-week season, you can get 3 games a week, 15 games. It's an opportunity for kids. But I think our drop dead has got to be around February 1st. If we're not doing something, then we've really got to revisit what we do with the summer sports, or even look ahead to our spring sports.
Yeah, because you get to a point, right, where you're running out of time here. You've got to consider next year as well into this year's equation. We're sitting here on Jan 5, wanting to play right now, but like you got to almost count backwards in a sense, in my eyes, because if you get too far down the rabbit hole, there's just not going to be enough time. And I think Nic mentioned earlier, you want to give the kids a little bit of a break at some point here. You can't just like steamroll into August 12th or whatever the day is of contact days for the next year, and the kids don't ever have a break. That's kind of the tricky thing. And let's talk some football now. Coach Hefner, where do you kind of lie into the feelings of, do we play 4 games? Do we play 5 games? Where's your cutoff in that, if your minimum?
Yeah, that's tough. I take any days, any games that we get. But the other parts with football that I forget is you got to get your reconditioned helmets back, your shoulders back, and the body's back in shape for the following ball. So there's a lot of things that affect football. Field conditions, what kind of shape your field going to fall if you try and play in March and April. So I think there's a lot to factor in, but kids are the most important thing, and if it's the best thing for the kids to play, we need to find a way to.
Andy, what's your cutoff? What do you feel like you could realistically do in a 5-week season where the playoffs probably aren't going to happen, right? I mean, I think we're all kind of in that same feeling and understanding that you're probably not going to compete for a state title, right?
Yeah, it doesn't look that way. The one thing that I think gets lost on everybody, Brett, is, and I'm sure Dan thought of this, the athletic directors have already rescheduled basketball season once, and they scheduled it with 2 games a week. And now they've limited and said, okay, now we can play more than 2 games a week. So then they go back and they change it again. And at some point in time, I don't think people realize the logistical nightmares of travel. I don't think people understand, and Dan can speak to this, but scheduling officials. I've got some really good friends that are athletic directors, and I think that becomes lost on everybody. We've got contingency plans for some turf fields in the area that we've called and talked to if we get something that's terribly muddy, like Heffy says, to try to save our field from the fall. But I'll tell you this, at some point in time, it's going to have to get to the point where when we get to the start date of your season, if you can't play it, it's got to be canceled for the sake of all the other sports. And I hate that. We got one looming because, Brett, I'll tell you, like, when it was officially canceled for the fall, you saw our kids' shoulders go from here to here. When then all of a sudden basketball's canceled, I see another big slump. Then all of a sudden, hey, let's start this thing again right after the first of the year and let's get it going. And that's obviously not happening. Then football, bang. Then all of a sudden spring sports. So it's an emotional roller coaster for kids. And you can literally see it on our kids' faces. You can see it in their work ethic. You can see it in the way they carry themselves in the classroom. This stuff's really important to kids. It takes its toll on them. But I think the one thing that's overlooked is maybe the biggest toll it takes on them is having it dangled out in front of them for so long. And then all of a sudden, hey, we can't do it. And kids can only take that so many times before. I really believe a lot of kids would just say, hey, listen, if you say we can do it, set a date and let's go do it, regardless of mitigations, regardless of tiers. And if we can't, then let's not. Because that's not what they want. But I think that might be better than the alternative of continually dangling it out in front of them with a date and then taking it away. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Totally agree, Coach. That's what me and my athletic director pretty much came down to the point of. We're not going to tell them anything until we got a for sure plan again. Like you said, we're not going to keep leading our kids on, leading our parents on, and we really don't have a decisive plan of doing it. So we're going to wait until like it's pretty much known, and then we're going to go.
Brett, what do you think of that? Because I'm curious from down south perspective, and look, this is not meant to be political, but like the further south you go, things are different. That may be different in a school like Effingham than it is in a school like Monticello or Danville or whatever it is. So how have you kind of taken, what Andy and Durrell said there?
We haven't had many problems, and that's a good part for us. Most of our issues have been through the contact rate, positive cases in school. and we thought we could have fall. I'm sure everybody else thought they could. I think we could have played and could have played in the fall very safely. And but our positivity rates down have a ton of issues with it. It's the contact tracing more than positive cases, and through all of our workouts and everything, it's in our program. So we're anxious to play, and hopefully we get the chance.
Do you feel like, Andy, you could play football safely right now?
Yeah, I do. I do because I watched it in the fall in every state around us. I do because I've watched, this is not an issue in our schools. And we've done a good job. Our administration's done an unbelievable job. And more importantly than that, our kids have done an unbelievable job of adhering to protocols, wearing masks, staying socially distant, doing what they're supposed to do. Will a game here and there, listen, I think our kids would fully understand, hey, if we start this thing on February 15th, we may get to week 2, and on a Thursday, we get a phone call that says, hey, we've got a positive test. We've got 17 kids who are in close proximity at practice. We've got to wait. And so maybe that happens. But the fact that there's a 7-game schedule waiting for us out there, if it can start on February 15th, it needs to start. But that's why I'm at the point where I say, hey, if you get to the date and you can't start it, you've got to look to the next date to make it to the next date of the start of a season to make it happen. But I do think we could play. I thought we could have played in the fall. And I'm not saying that it would have went off without a hiccup. We might have been going to Warrensburg Latham on a Friday night and got a call on a Thursday. We understand that. But the fact of the matter is I watched 5 games in Indiana, and I drove 2 minutes from Danville High School on the way to Seeger High School for a third-round sectional championship game, and they played.
Yeah. Are you kind of in that same mindset, Brett, that like you just want a cutoff where the kids need to just like know, hey, if we can't do it by February 15th, it's not going to happen?
Yeah, I think you have to for everybody involved. Just not only the kids, but all the other sports. And I get what the spring sports are saying, and I understand it. They lost their season last year, and we don't want to lose any more seasons. But if we're at that point where try and squeeze everything in, I just don't know how you, like places like Tuscola, where you got multi-sport athletes. What are those kids supposed to do? And now what's the risk of their injuries? You look at the NFL and college and even the number of injuries just because people couldn't train the way they normally train and run and do all that. And, you're going to teach a kid to tackle in the gym on February 15th because you probably can't go outside, unless you're a place with turf and it's not frozen. And so, there's just a lot of things to factor in.
Do you feel like that, you can play safely and that you're going to play this season?
I don't know. Tell me what the weather's going to be, and I'll let you know. I just think the number of rainouts and stuff like that you get. Now we don't have snow, but Mount Zion's got inches right now. So what's it going to be like in February?
Yeah. Dan,
Brett, I had a guy.
Yeah,
Brett, I had a guy stop me at the hardware store this week, and he said, "Hey," he says, "How are you going to tackle when the ground's frozen?" And I said, "Well, we won't." And I said, "We'll have to live with the fact that we'll probably miss some tackles, but at least our kids will get to compete because we don't go to the ground anyways, hardly ever, unless it's unbelievably controlled." And so, but you're going to slip on it. You're going to have scrapes. You're going to turn ankles. But you do that in a regular fall anyways. And so I think it would change the way we did some things. It would change probably some things schematically even in terms of what you can do in those conditions. But I think it becomes like, 3rd round, 4th round playoff games.
Right, and it's better than the alternative, right? I think as coaches, I don't want to speak for you fully, but you'd be willing and happy to change to a running approach or whatever else you need to do to make the game happen, and that seems like or the weather seems almost like I don't want to say the least of our problems here, but just like, hey, if it's bad weather, it beats not playing at all, right? It doesn't matter how cold it is.
I think our whole town would agree with that.
Yeah. Dan, how do you feel as an AD in terms of like getting to a cutoff point and just like your kids ripping the Band-Aid off and saying, hey, look, this isn't going to happen?
I think that's where we need to go. I mean, I just we're running out of time, and we know we can play baseball and softball. We were allowed to do it in the fall, and they were a low risk sport. And since that's something that we can know, I don't want to see us get till March and April, and we're still not playing any sports, and give those kids a full season. And I'm hopeful that we can get track to look normal, because some of the rumors out there is every other lane and no relays. But then girls soccer is the other one that's not being discussed. For us, there's not a lot of opportunities for kids to go outside of school and play club soccer around here. So our girls soccer team's definitely affected by that as well. So like I say, I'm hoping that we can get some cutoff dates in place. And unfortunately, difficult decisions need to be made. But more importantly, I think the one thing that is frustrating from an administrative standpoint is the lack of communication. The IHSA has begged and begged and begged for conversations, and the meetings haven't even occurred yet. They've been trying since back in August, if not July. And the number one question that we have asked since this all came out in July was, how does something go from a high risk to a medium risk? How does something go from a medium risk to a low risk? We're in schools, we have scales, we have grades, we have rules, we have, but that's something that's never been provided to anybody in the state. All we ever hear is if the positivity rate goes for 3+ days, you're going back in mitigation. We're stuck in a mitigation right now that the numbers allowed us to get out of, but we stayed in it. So that's the frustrating part from the communication point from the higher ups in our state is that nobody is sharing with anybody how we can move along and what has to happen. Maybe if we had that information, if this is what would happen, it would allow us to be at ease with making decisions.
Yeah, and the IHSA is in an unenviable position, right? I mean, yes, everyone has a bicker with the IHSA and how they do things, and that's fine. I think overall they want the kids to play, and that's what they've said. Craig Anderson has come out and said we want the kids to play, but we want them to be safe, and we need them to be safe. And with how our system is set up in this state from our legislatures and from our governor, it doesn't seem like that is going to, he said, the governor Pritzker has said, unless there's a vaccine, he doesn't see contact sports being played. That's really disheartening for a lot of people, and I get it, and that's tough, but he hasn't backed away from that either, and that's the part that it's just kind of looking at it going, what are we doing here and where are we going?
And how much with basketball depends on Chicago. I hate to say it, but if Chicago's not in school and the Chicago public schools are not in, how is basketball going to start? Unfortunately, the Chicago carries so much weight, when it comes to high school basketball in the state.
I agree. I said that too. Like when IHSA said we were playing, and then the governor said we weren't playing, then the CPS came out and said we weren't playing, I knew we weren't playing. Like you said, because reality is it's like our version of ACC and Big Ten of basketball. So that's just how it is.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough for everybody because everybody wants some definitive answer, and there's just not one in a pandemic. And I think that's what's really tough for so many people is that no one knows, and where's the leadership? And that's what's really been a question on most people's mind. We've seen lawsuits trying to sue the governor, trying to sue IDPH, trying to sue the IHSA in that sense. And we're all trying to just navigate an unknown field here of what's ahead in 2021. And I'm like so many other people, I had hoped that once we turn the calendar to 2021, not that we would just snap our fingers and it would all get better or go away. I think we all know that's not the case, but at least we'd be trending in that right direction. And hopefully the vaccine can get here and we can move in that right direction. All right, as we wrap up here, we've been going for almost 45 minutes now. I appreciate you guys jumping on here in this conversation. What are your lasting thoughts here, and what are you going to leave us with tonight as we look forward here on January 5th to February 5th and March 5th, and how do you plan to go navigate the next week, 2 weeks, 2 months, and as we go here throughout the year, looking forward to next year? Andy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, the same way we've done it since the beginning. You can never control what's out of your control, and that's where I feel for the IHSA. Craig and Sam and the guys at the IHSA have done such a great job for kids in our state over the years. But their hands were tied. And then we spent a month kicking the ball back and forth between the governor and IHSA, right? And they're just trying to, I think, really had the best interest of kids at heart. But for us, and what I tell our kids every day, we work out every day still. We work out every day because that's the only thing in our power that we can control. When we finally get a chance to play, do you want to be ready to play and compete at a high level? Or do you want to step back and say, well, we can't do anything anyway, so we might as well just sit around and not make ourselves better? So I think Dan mentioned that at the beginning of his talk to introduce this whole section, but control what you can control, which is your effort every day and your mentality every day. And then when we finally can put athletics under our own control, you'll be ready to control the outcome of those. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. And just to note here, and I don't know if I said this at the beginning, I can't remember now or not. Nothing has been canceled as of yet. Everything's just been postponed. No sports are being played right now due to level 3 mitigations imposed by the governor and IDPH. And so everything's just on a standstill right now. Does it give you hope, Larry, that you can still play? And do you feel like that you'll get a chance to play softball this year?
Yeah, I absolutely feel really good about it. The fact that we were able to get through that fall season without any really major issues, I think it showed it can be done. I hope the next time we talk, it's post game at some point. I hope all these guys get to have that conversation with you. But yeah, really looking forward to maybe getting to go whatever time frame it is, and I wish everybody's kids the best.
Nic, what about you?
It's the exact same thing we've heard from the last two guys. We stress all the time about controlling what we can control in life and moving forward and making smart decisions. And that's the same thing we've been telling our kids, and Coach Sparks and I were in that, area where ours is last, right? So we've been making sure, at least we have been making sure our kids are staying focused on what's in front of them. And for a lot of my guys, that's, basketball and football, and do those things and get ready for your sport. We want to support you through it. And then, we'll be ready for baseball and, this spring, or I guess this summer, even at some point. And that's it. We just tell them your focus determines your reality. Let's get focused on the task at hand and be ready to go outside when we get the chance.
Durrell, closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, pretty much. We don't go through tragedy. We grow through tragedy. Faith is something to just believe in. Even if our kids are not allowed to play, I try to keep them motivated. The bigger picture, which is keep grooming them to be positive and great young men. So it's beyond even basketball. Basketball is a part of it. It's a part of it. So we just try to keep them in tune. And my thing is, too, just like a lot of our parents and grandparents have these remarkable stories of how they walked 10 miles in the snow to get to school, just think about some of the incredible stories our kids are going to be able to share with their kids. So it's going to be some amazing stories 10 years from now. That's the way you got to look at it. You got to keep a positive mindset for it, and you just got to keep going through things.
Yeah, and I hope we get those positive stories coming out of it. And, hey, I went through all of this, and I did these Zoom workouts, and maybe then they'll be going, what is Zoom? I don't even know,
Exactly. For the record, the first Zoom that I ever remember witnessing seeing, the Brady Bunch. The Brady Bunch was Zooming way before everybody else was.
They had it down, how many decades ago, for sure. Yeah. Brett, final thoughts from you as we wrap up here.
Nothing. Our kids have been through a lot, and hopefully they get the opportunity to show their all.
And we lost Brett. Let's see if we get him back. Are you back with us, Brett?
I am. I can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yep, we got you. Final thoughts from you, Coach.
Okay. Just hopeful that our kids get a chance to finish out the year strong. All the work they put in and all waiting their turn. We know the quote-unquote spring sports are going to go baseball, softball, and track, and hopefully our football and basketball guys get a chance to do the same thing. And if we get that chance, wish everybody the best of luck, and try and get this year going in the right direction.
Dan, you're the last one. How do you wrap us up tonight?
I echo that. And one of the things that, we preached was to, in high school, you're supposed to get unlimited sports for 4 years and do everything you can, and now we've got to look at it and more look at it from an appreciation of sports and the opportunity to compete and to own the moment and, control what we can control. But the last thing that I'm hoping for is, that we can get some dates in mind, some drop dead dates. And if that means, I know Coach Romine said something earlier about athletic directors making schedules. Hey, if I got to make schedule 5.0, I'm all in. You know, I'd be more than willing to put the hours and the time in to find a schedule, getting everybody competing. But I'd like to see the IHSA board of directors I think their meetings in the next week or two, to make one final, maybe a modification schedule that basketball goes in February and half of March, and football gets pushed back a little bit in 7-week baseball season. If that's what it takes, I'm all for it. Opportunities for kids. So I'm hoping to see them competing. If not, if basketball, volleyball, and football can't go, then let's get our baseball and softball and hopefully soccer and track kids going, doing something, competing.
Well said. Well said. Thank you guys so much as we wrap up here tonight. I've kept you past time, and I appreciate your conversation as we look forward here to hopefully some brighter days. So thanks for joining on our roundtable. I hope one day we can do this again in person and we can chat post-game like a couple of you mentioned, and we'll get out there and cover your teams once again, and that we can all maybe see some sport this season in all of these seasons, whether that's basketball, football, track, soccer, baseball, softball, whatever else is left, that, you know, we can move in a positive direction here towards doing it safely, number one, and then getting these kids back out on the court and field. So thank you guys so much for joining in, and we will see you hopefully soon out in person on the field soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brett.
Thanks, Brett.
Everybody stay safe.